520 miles from North Carolina. He weighs in at 224 pounds and is the AEW World Champion, Kenny
I'll get fixed, Bushi. I will see you.
Kenny Omega, before being the great wrestler he is today, was a young man frustrated by American wrestling's limitations. His run through the indie scene was one that couldn't fulfill his potential, despite his reputation in the Canadian scene. In 2006, and right after he rejected an offer from WWE, it seemed Kenny's dream of being a wrestler was going to be put down in sight of a realistic perspective. Until, in that same year, Winnipeg's local promoter called him to wrestle against a known wrestler, AJ Styles. This match was so good that, citing both AJ and Omega, this revived his love for pro wrestling. Soon after this, a friend of Omega showed him a video about a weird Japanese promotion called Dramatic Dream Team. The absurd and stupidly creative style caught his eye, but in said video, there was a wrestler that made him set his goal and made him believe his destiny was to be there and defeat him. Omega, excited for this chance to exploit his creative approach, and because of DDT's proposal, quickly sent a video imitating the same style. That video arrived to the mailbox of the owner of DDT, Sanshiro Takagi. That video made Takagi call Kenny to wrestle for DDT. Omega already had some kind of career in the independent scene, but this match took him to a whole new level, and was the golden chance he was looking for. Omega had challenged Kota Ibushi to a DDT match, which, without knowing, was going to start pro wrestling's greatest love story. Ibushi was that wrestler who inspired Kenny to contact Takagi, and he was also interested in wrestling Kenny. In what looks like a mutual feeling, a match was booked for August 6, and both Ibushi and Omega were prepared to give their all. DDT uploaded this match to their YouTube channel for free, but it doesn't include entrances and what truly matters from this match. There are very few times a foreign wrestler is able to mold perfectly to another country's company, but Omega is literally made for DDT. Under remix of Mega Man's melody, Omega enters the ring and the crowd goes wild, goes out and screams loudly, controlling the crowd perfectly. Ibushi enters the ring with his classic theme song, and the crowd applauds him as always. Ibushi extends his hand to Kenny, but he rejects it, reinforcing his role as a gaijin. But it's only a matter of time for this to be meaningless. The match starts, and the crowd surprisingly is on Kenny's side. Both the clash in the middle of the ring, and they have an insane chemistry for two wrestlers that have never wrestled nor saw each other. The crowd reacts in awe to what they're doing, and their connection is instant. There's not a single break. They're both made for each other. Omega and Ibushi do everything for a reason, and their vision of pro wrestling allows them to create a bizarre, stupid, and great match. There's something magical about this. Omega's challenge to Ibushi was born from an idea Kenny had of him. Omega thought he and Ibushi shared philosophies in regard to pro wrestling, and the mix between comedy and art, which, and I repeat, made them destined to face each other. That's how Omega got his big shot to prove what he was capable of doing against one of the most improved wrestlers in that time. In an interesting scenario, and in a match that shouldn't be as good as it is. This match, besides making people fall in love, created a mutual feeling of respect between both men, a feeling that would grow with time. Despite being defeated, Kenny won the heart of the DDT aficionados. After the match ended, Ibushi declared Kenny Omega as an amazing wrestler and, of course, a great guy. He also said there was something they had in common, and he ended his discourse saying he loved Omega. Did y'all ever hear the phrase, nothing ventured, nothing gained? It seems like Kenny used it, because in most universes, the idea of this match couldn't have been done. Omega couldn't have such a deep and emotional connection with a wrestler that he barely knew from a video. But it happened. You can call it luck, fate, the script's magic, or another word, but I will save it for later. As days passed, the match between Kenny and Ibushi left them on a pedestal, and said match would give Kenny a chance to shine in the American independent scene, which had already turned its back on him. Here's where everything starts going on as Kenny wished. After his match with Ibushi, Omega gets booked in the hottest independent companies at that moment. ROH, PWG, and WXW would look for his services, and he had matches against talents like El Generico, Davey Richards, and Tyler Black. Omega participated in PWG's 2008 Battle of Los Angeles, and he used an Ibushi t-shirt in a place where just one person potentially knew him. DDT pushed him instantly, and he wrestled against Sanshiro Takagi in a match for the Extreme Championship that, even in defeat, made him grow in said company. People were starting to hear Kenny's name, and they were seeing the kind of talent he had. Ibushi was becoming known in Japan as well. Kota's case was one of exceptional nature. He had everything to shine in the future. He had the skills, the connection with the crowd, the platform in DDT, and the experience in both Noah and New Japan Pro Wrestling. In fact, Ibushi had already arrived to the biggest independent companies in the US before Kenny. For a man known and almost made in Japan, this match was the push he needed to be known globally. Ibushi's year was far better than Kenny's, because he was already someone relevant in Japan. Kenny's figure appeared out of nowhere, both in Japan and the world at large. This was a guy that was wrestling for Deep South and then became one of the most talked about wrestlers with just one match. These coincidences were not just that. Something was hidden behind all of this. If they could do this kind of impactful wrestling against each other, what could they do together? 2008 came to an end, but 2009 was going to be a golden year. After this match, Omega became Ibushi's friend and vice versa. DDT was looking to get all the juice from their match, and they wanted to start a rivalry. For some reason, both Omega and Ibushi didn't want to wrestle each other anymore, and both Omega and Ibushi wanted DDT to hire Kenny full-time and make him live in Japan. And for whatever reason, DDT did exactly that. We're back on the same track. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. DDT had no good reason to do this, being an underground company they were at the time. But they ventured, and oh boy, they gained. Omega decided to live in Japan to be closer to Ibushi, and what was already his main promotion. Both wrestlers were destined to change the wrestling world, and to do that, they had to join forces. Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi joined forces, and as a brotherhood, were willing to achieve their goal. And thus, they proposed changing the world. From this moment, the Golden Brothers were born. And before they could even wrestle, both Omega and Ibushi said to Sanshiro they wanted to be known as Golden Lovers. So, the Golden Lovers were born. Omega and Ibushi literally had one match as a team before getting a chance for DDT's tag championships. It seemed Takako didn't want to lose a second, and they got instantly booked. Kenny and Kota's union was the new highlight of the Japanese company, and the crowd was already invested in both wrestlers more than ever. Their first match was a trios match, but since that day, they were destined to become something bigger. This crescendo of popularity for the Golden Lovers was scary, because their fanbase in Japan was formed mainly by women, and in a country as culturally diverse as Japan, was a sign of the success they were going to have in the future. After this match, the tag champions would confront Omega and Ibushi. As any intelligent person would do, Takagi, dressed in a maid outfit for some reason, welcome to DDT, booked a match between the Golden Lovers and the tag champs. In this match, the champs would be on a hurry as they were facing this new team. The Golden Lovers were completely in sync. After a hard bout where Omega started bleeding after Hirashima's kicks, both wrestlers got to win the tag team championships on their first try. This match showed a difference between levels. In each team, there's a wrestler that's better than the other. Few teams can actually have wrestlers on the same level. The Golden Lovers were a peculiar case. Both were great wrestlers, but they were oriented to a certain style. Omega was an entertainer, he wrestled like crazy, but what really got people's eyes were both his attitude and the things he did for DDT. He felt like a generic anime character in real life, but that was his charm. Ibushi was the wrestler. He was all about great moves, lethal strikes, and all the good things about conventional Japanese pro wrestling. And if you mix that in a company that had struck a balance between serious pro wrestling and stupid pro wrestling, you can form a really interesting dynamic. While Omega was excellent under DDT's wrestling style, when he was in a serious match, he struggled compared to Kota. During this year, Omega and Ibushi had just a single match as a team, which was weird because every team got to wrestle. Both had interesting paths. Ibushi was called to wrestle in Chikara. He wrestled for BJW, and he had matches around Japan as he was already accustomed to. In opposition, Omega was involved in the American independent scene. Either wrestling for ROH or PWG, Omega was a common wrestler in said promotions. He had some months loaded with great matches against Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli, and the most compelling match I have ever seen, against Bryan Danielson. Ibushi on the other side kept his crusade towards every company disposed to book him. The Golden Lovers lost their tag championships to DDT's crowd surprise. The situation had an answer, and you could find it looking at Ibushi's schedule on the rest of the year. Kota would pass around tournament after tournament. Best of Super Juniors, King of DDT, the Nippon TV Cup, and the Super J Cup. It was a messy schedule, and adding some tag belts was going to be a disaster. Ibushi won the King of DDT and challenged Harashima to the KOD Championship match. In a tough affair, Ibushi won said championship. Omega, miles away, got to win the 2009's Battle of Los Angeles, and then the PWG World Championship. When I said 2009 was going to be a golden year, I was not lying. The Golden Lovers closed it with a bang, and gold on both their hands. But this story was just starting. 2010, Ibushi would start the year the best way possible. A new company created by Gabe Sapolsky called Evolve was born, and their first event had a main event match between himself and Davey Richards. Having a show with your name on the title is big, but what's bigger is knowing that it's their first show. Richards beat Kota, but this match was still making him bigger and more known. This would just be the entree play, because his main course would be the Golden Lovers debut for New Japan Pro Wrestling. Omega and Ibushi defeated Gedo and Jado, leaving a warning for the company's teams. After this match, their paths would have some obstacles. Omega lost his PWG World Championship against Davey Richards, while Ibushi couldn't get to regain his KOD Championship against Daisuke Sekimoto. Something that started happening during this time was Ibushi's defeats every time he wrestled with a partner that was not Kenny. The same thing also happened to Omega. Both wrestlers needed each other to get to their maximum potential. Omega tried to win the IWGP Junior Championship against Prince Devitt, but he was defeated. After many bumps and no reward, the Golden Lovers would get a title shot against Prince Devitt and Ryusuke Taguchi. The IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Championships were on the line. After 15 minutes, the Golden Lovers won the Tag Championships after a hard-earned bout, and they proved they needed each other. The Golden Lovers needed each other to win, because they loved and respected each other. Those championships represented their combined effort. Both Kenny and Kota defended those belts soon after, but on a DDT show. Omega and Ibushi successfully defended their belts against Apollo 55 once more. Both Ibushi and Omega were more focused on the team this time, and it helped them in keeping their belts around their waist against Gedo and Jado. 2010 closed with a bang, but next year was not going to be so generous. (2011) in the Tokyo Dome. Wrestle Kingdom 5 drew a line between Ibushi and Omega. While Kota was wrestling Devitt for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship, with his partner watching and protecting him ringside, Kenny was forced to be on the division's filler match alone, because Ibushi was training. Not only that, the Golden Lovers lost their IWGP Junior Tag Championships against Apollo 55. Omega and Ibushi started on the wrong foot, and this was only going to get worse, at least for Kenny. The Golden Lovers went separate ways during the next months. The annual Best of the Super Juniors was starting, and while Omega couldn't get past Davey Richards, Ibushi was rejoiced by winning the tournament. Soon after, Ibushi started focusing on his singles career. He signed a part-time contract with New Japan, doing some appearances from time to time, showing his true interest. Omega had a lot of partners to fill the gap Ibushi left. One of these teams was with Michael Nakazawa, where he got to win the KOD Tag Championships. On the other hand, Ibushi got to crown himself as the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion against Prince Devitt. They were going on separate paths. The Lovers tried to win the IWGP Junior Tag Championships again, but the lack of success and time together affected them, and they were defeated. While Ibushi was focusing on his career and being a big star in the future, Omega was the one worried about the Golden Lovers, because he didn't have any plans for his future. Omega wanted to live up to that promise, but he didn't think his friend was interested. The ship had sailed away, and both needed to search for new horizons. Omega formed his own path. He entered All Japan Wrestling's Junior League, and he was focused on winning the Junior Championship, which he did with nobody in his corner. This was enough for Kenny to start believing in his own skills as a wrestler. Meanwhile, Ibushi won the Tag Championships, something he couldn't do with Kenny. Kota was on his rhythm, and Kenny had to step up if he wasn't to follow him. But Kota's genius ability was not going to allow that. The year was closing off, and things didn't look right. This line had separated both wrestlers, and Omega's insecurities started to get into his own head. Insecurities that didn't leave him alone, and made him question his future as a wrestler and as a person. Yeah, he had a good singles run, but his destiny was alongside Ibushi, right? They were going to change the world, right? Ibushi was having a great career, he was winning championships, and he seemingly didn't need Omega, but Kenny needed him. An angel needs two wings to fly high. Omega couldn't live a reality without Ibushi. He couldn't stand being away from Ibushi in this world. Omega hated it. He hated the idea of being rejected. He hated the idea of being cast away. Omega hated the idea of being abandoned. The hype around the Golden Lovers was done, and Omega didn't know how to be better because you can't be better than perfect. Omega couldn't surpass Ibushi. Maybe those that criticized him were right. He was not on Ibushi's level. Maybe he was just holding him back. Maybe Ibushi saved his career because he was not talented. Maybe there was nothing between them. Maybe they didn't respect and care about each other. Maybe, and just maybe, Omega and Ibushi didn't love each other. A new year had begun. Omega started at his pace, and he had to defend his junior championship. Something starts to happen, however. Omega wins more than ever. Kenny beats Hiroshi Yamamoto, Kaz Hayashi, Shuji Kanjo, and Hiroshima, the wrestler who exposed Kenny in 2009 as weak and fragile after making him bleed. The wrestler who exposed Omega as an easy-to-break man. The wrestler who exposed Omega as infinitely inferior to Ibushi. Omega is winning, and he doesn't need Ibushi. His path turns into a hostile environment, where there are no laughs and no games, because he defends that championship with every single violent venom running inside his body. Meanwhile, Ibushi works a less tough schedule, but he still wins more than Omega, because after years, Kota recovers his KOD championship. And then he recovers his IWGP Junior Championship after he lost it to Loki. This line will not cease to exist. This line will pull them apart. This line will show who's better, and that they are not going to change anything. While Omega busts his ass and fights for the few chances he gets, Ibushi has more opportunities to shine thanks to the companies he wrestles for. They see the diamond that they have on Kota, they see his bright future as a star, but they don't see Omega's effort to stand out. Kenny loses his junior championship against Kai in a tough match, where Omega leaves years off his life, but that's not enough, and it never will be. He's not going to be better than Ibushi. Despite everything, DDT and New Japan kept promoting the Golden Lovers as a team, but it was not the same anymore. Kenny knew Ibushi had abandoned him, and it was a reality he was going to have to accept. Kota had broken their promise in a search for glory and fame. He betrayed his ideals to get the belts and the best bouts. Kenny had enough. Motivated by the hatred and pain he had inside his heart for years, and mad not only with the world that treated him as a B-plus wrestler, but the person he loved, Omega entered the King of DDT tournament, and he became a monster. Each victory was decisive, each victory was undeniable, and each bout was the best one. With each victory, Omega became undefeated. His path turned out to be rough, but after an awful year, Omega was going to show everyone what he was made of. His reward at the end of this inhuman road to walk was the KOD Championship, but he had to go through the toughest obstacle of his life. One more time. There's some kind of video package before this match, and it tells the story of both Omega and Ibushi as part of DDT's story. The Inshoko Dino tries to lighten up the mood, but the main event draws near, and it's in DDT's biggest event ever. The surrealistic comedy of DDT gets cut the second that the Mega Man melody sounds. This is reality. There's no going back now. It's sad that it ended like this, but it was obvious. Love hurts after all. Maybe the Golden Lovers were destined to face each other here. Maybe this is the price they have to pay for everything ventured. Maybe this is the price of changing the wrestling world. Maybe this is the moment that they needed. Maybe they just had to fix everything once and for all, to see who was the better wrestler. But there's no time for maybes. Omega comes out, and he's willing to take that belt from Ibushi by any means. No matter the method, he wants and needs to be acknowledged. The Budokan Hall, the venue of big fights through time and history, rewards his efforts, and the reigning streamers fill the gap in his heart. Ibushi comes out with his classic tune. He has both the KOD Championship and the IWGP Junior Belt. This makes Omega know that, even in defeat, Ibushi will still come out as the best wrestler at the end of this match. This is a great detail, because even if Kenny beats Kota, he's still going to be worse. For Ibushi, this match shouldn't mean anything. For Kenny, this means everything. Both understand the importance of this match, but they can't let themselves get carried away, because they know each other perfectly. There are a lot of things to be said about this match. We can talk about Omega entering this match with no belt on his waist, and Ibushi carrying all the gold. We can talk about this match as Kenny's last chance to prove his worth. We can talk about Ibushi being in the peak of his career, and Omega's crisis as a wrestler. We can talk about the meaning of this match for both, but sometimes words are not enough. The KOD Championship stands in the middle of both men, but this battle is more than that. Ibushi fights for the love of pro wrestling, and Omega fights to see if Ibushi ever loved him. The bell sounds. Omega and Ibushi don't say a word. The initial lockup speaks for itself and cuts to silence. This is not 2008's Omega. Kota and Kenny start the match quickly, and the first one down is Ibushi. Omega mocks Kota and provokes him. This behavior from Kenny would be weird. Both Ibushi and Kenny go all the way, and they counterattack every move coming from the other. Kenny uses an aggressive offense against Kota. He focuses his attacks on Ibushi's arm, and it almost seems like he slightly despises him. Every strike comes with a scream of rage, something not too common in Omega. For the first time, he's dominating Ibushi. The attack on Kota's arm continues, and each time it gets worse. After a long segment, Ibushi starts defending himself with stiff kicks. Kota runs to the turnbuckle, and he tries the Golden Lovers classic moonsault, but Kenny intercepts him and destroys him with a dragon suplex on the apron. And let me tell you, the only thing I see from Omega here is just plain hate. Even when Kota can't get up quickly in the ring, Kenny attacks him. The difference in body physique also gives me a weird feeling. In 2008, and beforehand, Ibushi was always the one with the better body. In this match specifically, Omega has the best physique. Kenny keeps attacking the now hurt arm of Ibushi and his neck, a part of his body that has an infamous reputation. The first minutes of this match go to Kenny. Each attack damages Ibushi and gives Omega an advantage. Kota, despite his prodigy repertoire, can't seem to understand the simple fact that Kenny knows him all too well. Ibushi gives Kenny stiff kicks, but he answers with strong chops and blows. Kota's elbow strikes are tough, and his kicks are dangerous. When Ibushi seemingly gets the advantage, Omega intercepts him again. This is something that happens a lot. After a few minutes, Kota gets the advantage and gives Kenny some brutal kicks in the ring. He tries to get Kenny in the ring, but he tries to smash Ibushi's neck. Kota counters a suplex and gives him a taste of his own medicine. Kenny drags himself to the ring, now severely hurt. Ibushi starts attacking Omega. His kicks are aggressive, dangerous, and decisive. Kenny can't intercept Kota for the same reason Kota couldn't do either. They're partners, friends, and lovers. They know each of their tricks. Their synchronization as a team for a long time makes this possible. Kenny and Kota start going all out with speed and fury. Each of their movements are more defining. Omega looks to surpass Ibushi, and he tries to pin him several times. Kenny kicks, crashes, and suplexes Kota against the mat, and the damage starts to be felt. Omega takes Kota to the outside in the sea of people. He tries to climb the platform, but Ibushi stops him from doing so and knocks him down with a kick. Kota climbs said platform and jumps to the Nippon Budokan's balcony. And upon climbing up, he jumps from said balcony onto Kenny. After this stretch, Ibushi gets Kenny onto the top rope. He recovers at the last second and crashes Kota's face against the turnbuckle to give him a buckle bomb for the ages. Their fighting spirit is alive in this contest, and Ibushi recovers from this insane move to counterattack. Their high-speed sequence is delayed, but it's not enough for Kenny to get the win. Kenny does his classic Kreutz Wrath, but it's not enough to take Kota either. Omega is desperate, and this gives Ibushi enough time to recover and do his Golden Star Bomb, but that can't stop Kenny. We're on the final stretch of this match. Everything can end with any move, and it shows. Both Kenny and Kota are exhausted, but it doesn't matter if it's rewarded with victory. Omega does a super Kreutz Wrath, but it's not enough to beat Kota, who doesn't understand how he kicks out. Both Omega and Ibushi go back to the turnbuckle, and Kota does a magic trick, kicking Kenny and giving him a brutal Hurricane Rana to the outside. The crowd starts to chant Kenny's name, and he gets up with what's left of his body. Not yet. He needs to win to prove his relationship with Ibushi was not just a miracle. Kenny needs to win to feel good with himself and show Ibushi and the crowd he's as good. This can't end this way. Omega and Ibushi are tired, and it's a miracle they can get up. Kenny hits Kota, but he destroys his ribs with a kick. Despite that kick, Omega gets up, and Ibushi gives him some tough jabs. Kenny has enough and crashes Ibushi against the mat, but just like an invincible villain, he can't feel pain. But Kota's not a villain. He's a hero, right? Omega dodges Ibushi's Phoenix Splash and pulls up a knee strike eerily familiar to the one he does today. Kenny has a chance to win, and he looks to end it all to know if what moved him was real love. Omega uses his last choice, the one he stands for, the one that can represent his path during these last years. Kenny travels to the depths of his near-broken heart and does the one-winged angel. But it's not enough. Ibushi kicks out when nobody could. He kicks out of the one-winged angel. Kenny has nothing left to do. The camera pans on him, and his pain doesn't allow him to get up. That was supposed to end it all. Why didn't it end there? Omega can't get up, but is consumed by his emotions. He attacks Kota, and Kota attacks him. They repeat blow after blow, and they crash in the middle of the ring. Omega counters Ibushi's offense and looks to work the arm after a long time. At this point, Kenny does not care if he needs to break his friend's arm to win. He does not care how to win. He just cares about winning. Omega's ambition eats him alive, and he looks for a super one-winged angel, but he can't do it. He's tired. Kota kicks him and gets him on the turnbuckle. It seems like Kenny is done. Ibushi does a Phoenix suplex from the top rope. 1, 2, Omega kicks out. With his last effort, but at this point you can't avoid defeat. There's no peace and there's no hope. Kota climbs the top rope and does his Phoenix Splash, and the count gets to 3. Even if he hugs him, even if he cheers him up, Ibushi already broke his heart. Kota wins, but he loses Omega. And Kenny? He lost a long time ago. When Ibushi went a different path than his, when Ibushi was winning, and when he was losing, the roles were defined. And it's weird. During this whole match, I feel like this shouldn't be happening. That this story shouldn't be like this, and this is not the right thing. The Golden Lovers should be together, and not against each other, but I can't avoid it, and neither can they. Life brought them here. And is there a reward for this? Is there an achievement to earn after changing the life of he who supported you and loved you? Is there a satisfaction, something that can justify ruining your best friend's life? Not for Ibushi. After this match, Ibushi lost his 2 championships consecutively in a matter of days. He lost the IWGP Junior Championship against Loki, and the KOD Openweight Championship against El Generico. Kota would try to recover it, but he couldn't do it. Omega tried to recover his All Japan Junior Championship against Hiroshi Yamamoto, but he would fall too. Both couldn't achieve their goal of recovering the belts, and it seemed their year was going to end without gold. Until the one that started 2012, losing a championship belt, ended the year winning another title. Omega defeats El Generico and wins the KOD Openweight Championship for the first time in his career. And now, Kota had to be in Kenny's corner. A new year starts. 2013 was an interesting year for both wrestlers. While Ibushi started the year losing a chance for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight belt against a reformed Prince Devitt, Kenny won the DDT Extreme Championship and became double champion. The almost non-existent Golden Lovers try to win the Tag Team Championships again, but they lose. The start of the year left Kenny in a bigger place than Ibushi, but he had bigger duties. While Kota was wrestling relevant tag matches, Omega was taking out years of his life in the ring against every challenger that stepped up. This meant a change of attitude in Kenny. Omega had title offenses against Hiroshima, Saya Morohashi, and his new partner, Michael Nakazawa, before falling against Shigehiro Irie for the KOD Championship. After said match, Kota would try to recover that same belt, but he couldn't get the job done. Omega entered Best of the Super Juniors in that year, and he had a great tournament. He arrived to the semifinals and was going to face his old rival Prince Devitt, but something was off. Back in 2010 and 2011, Devitt was the good-looking Apollo 55's junior Irish wrestler, but those days were long gone. Devitt betrayed Taguchi and created the Bullet Club, a faction of American wrestlers that didn't care about the honor of Japanese pro wrestling. With this information given, Devitt is the leader of Bullet Club, looking to make a name for himself. Omega, on the other hand, is the Golden Lover's good boy, who will defeat Gaijin Devitt with honor and pride. Right? While Devitt has his Bullet Club brothers watching his back, Kenny is absolutely alone. But that doesn't matter, he can wrestle for himself. He doesn't need Ibushi. Right? The so-called real rock'n'rolla, Prince Devitt, arrives in Kurikan Hall. He has his war dogs Tamatonga, Bad Luck Fale, and Carl Anderson. Devitt has turned into a monster. His complete change of attitude contrasts Omega's vibe. Devitt's partners are on his side. Kenny enters with his classic Mega Man tune, and the crowd claps with the beat. He has become a favorite of the crowd, and now he stands as their lonely hero. Omega plays with the crowd, claps at the same time as them, and spits charisma. He's feeding off of the crowd's love to face this new foe that has rejected every aspect of Japanese pro wrestling, and despite being alone, despite not having his lover in his corner, he has to win. Before the match, Devitt does the classic Bullet Club gesture and gives them the order to leave. Kenny is looking worried. What follows is a humiliation. Devitt, alongside his partners, tortures and hurts Omega. Each strike is accompanied with hate and spies. This match is short, but the beatdown lasts forever. It's something stuck in Kenny's head, something that will not leave easily. Devitt's Bloody Sunday steals the deal and shatters the path he's built until this moment. The Bullet Club stands victorious with their victim's shattered body. The Bullet Club wins again. This match could be defined as Omega facing the reality of pro wrestling as a whole. After years spent in DDT, Kenny's perception of both wrestling and life was different to others. Only Omega thinks he can hold on to meaningless stuff. Kenny does not understand the world he's in. He does not understand people that will betray him and abandon him all the time. That's the price of glory. You must be willing to pay it. There's two important things about this whole match, and both are important for Omega's story as a wrestler. One of them is the Bullet Club. Yes, they're gaijins. Yes, they don't have honor. Yes, they don't respect wrestling. But they're together. They're a dominant force where no one does something that they shouldn't do. There's no betraying of ideals because everything is for the group. The Bullet Club has something Kenny does not have, and he notices that. While Devitt stands as a bad guy, but is accompanied by his crew, Kenny stands as a good guy, but he's fighting alone. It doesn't matter if the people support him, they're not fighting his fight. The crowd was livid during every second of the match, but Omega lost like a damn dog. Even if they love him, that love's meaningless. They're not going to make him win by chanting his name. Kenny needs both power and strength to win. Omega needs to be someone else to win. He needs to pull the trigger. This match leaves Kenny with a scar, and despite everything, he will not be able to forget it. But the show must go on. The Golden Lovers keep wrestling as a team, but they're not winning any championships. They keep wrestling as a team, but they don't feel like one. The Golden Lovers keep wrestling as a team, but it doesn't matter anymore. Despite all of this, Kenny needs a chance, and he enters the King of DDT tournament. Last year, Omega defeated Hiroshima in the finals, but he can't defeat him this year. Ibushi would participate in the G1 Climax 23, and he had an interesting path with a match that defined his career. Kota faced the King of Strong Style, Shinsuke Nakamura, and even on defeat, he would rise to the sky again. Ibushi's name was heard around the country, and people were fascinated. In that year's Peter Pan, Kota faced none other than Kazuchika Okada in an interpromotional bout, and despite losing, he was on a whole different level in DDT. Ibushi was in New Japan longer than before. During the year's last month, both Kenny and Kota would team to fill the cards of shows. But when they had to get the job done, as accustomed, they couldn't win the tag championships. Because they no longer were a team. Another year passed. 2014 was a weird year. After all this time separated, after all these years where the Golden Lovers disappeared, they came back to life in a complicated context. The Golden Lovers finally won the KOD Tag Championships, and Ibushi defeated Devitt to win the IWGP Junior Heavyweight belt once and for all. It seemed things were going to be better. Both wrestlers defended their KOD Tag Championship successfully against Shuten Doji, the team formed by Kudo and Yukio Sakaguchi. Kota challenged Tomohiro Ishii for the Never belt, and even if he didn't win, he was growing as a star, far and far from Omega. Kenny entered the Best of Super Juniors and had a bittersweet experience. His run was not the best one, and he lost against Taichi and Nick Jackson. Wait, Nick Jackson? Now I need to offer you context about the situation because I didn't really say this, but it's very important for the plot. Kota defeated Devitt for the junior belt, we know that. After Wrestle Kingdom, Devitt's old buddy, Ryusuke Taguchi, announced his return and aimed for the Bullet Club leader. Devitt had to solve some pending issues, and while this happened, an offer from WWE came into his mailbox, so he was not going to stay. After their grudge match and invasion attack, the recently incorporated members of Bullet Club, Nick Jackson and Matt Jackson, better known as the Young Bucks, betrayed Devitt. In the same show, the known and now signed wrestler AJ Styles appeared and attacked Kazuchika Okada, aiming to be the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. In this context, Bullet Club was going through a whole transformation, and they didn't have any juniors. Kenny would look to win the KOD Championship against Hiroshima, but the match ended in a double knockout. Omega had another chance at wrestling Peter Pan in a three-way match, but he couldn't win the belt either. The Golden Lovers finally lost their tag championships against Konosuke Takeshita and Tetsuya Endo. Omega officially signed with New Japan, and he had his last match alongside Ibushi on October 26, 2014. In this match, Omega had dyed black hair, but previously he had always been blonde. I guess it grows with growing up. One must evolve, change their life, and pull the trigger. This match is special. It feels like the last time we will see the Golden Lovers together in a ring, with a goodbye kiss. This match is remembering the old times, where one was happy and didn't have to care about the ever-changing system that will put you to the ground. When you didn't have to care about having the best bouts and the best title reigns. When you were really going to change the world. A lot of classic foes interfere in this match to stop the Golden Lovers from winning, but this is not a bad thing. They don't want Kenny to leave. At one point, Omega doesn't want to leave either, because he's not sure about the things he could do now that he's not going to be with Ibushi, because he doesn't want to be alone, because he does not know what will happen out there in the real world. Kenny does not want to live a life without Ibushi, without DDT, and without love. Despite these insecurities, both Kota and Kenny finally face this reality. They face things that will end one day. Omega and Ibushi let the Golden Lovers rest, and they do a final golden shower. The count gets to 3. Kenny stays in the ring crying, thinking about what's going to happen, and Kota comes to hug him. Maybe that's something he needed from him before all of this happened. The Golden Lovers were back for a moment for one single match. The match where they said goodbye. The match where Omega said goodbye, and it's hard to leave a place that made him better than he was before. Kenny tucks his hair and cleans his tears, as streamers start to rain. It's a farewell after all. They give him a gift. The crowd cheers for him, and then he starts to talk. Omega says DDT is going to be inside his heart, that he shouldn't say goodbye because he's not going to retire, and that he needs the people to support him in his future ventures. There's a feeling of sadness seeping from these words. There's an interview with Kenny on the internet where he talks about New Japan. Omega has grown, Omega is hurt, and Omega realized he didn't have a lot of time to leave a mark. He changed. Kenny talks about his potential revenue and individual success. He wants to be taken more seriously. He wants to prevail in this system. In this interview, Kenny says that he does not want to be known as just another foreigner. He wants to make a name for himself, and therefore, playtime's over. Omega says goodbye to DDT, his own home that saw him grow as an amazing wrestler, and now he must walk a lonely road, without Ibushi, without DDT, and without mercy. Now, he needs to shoot his own bullets in the devil's sky, because this world is kill or be killed.